Welcome to Punch Keys Podcast. I'm Poppy Minix, your co-host, bringing you blunt talk for the fiction novelist.
And I'm Cascade, your other writerly co-host. If you love to ramble about writing and need a tribe, you found us.
Are you ready? We're uncorking now. Let's talk about punching those keys.
Poppy, it's that time of the week. It's my favorite time. It's Punch Keys.
This is my favorite time. And this is like my super favorite time because we have an interview.
I am super pumped. This interview is, I am still flabbergasted that she said yes. She is just released her debut novel, and with her debut novel, she made the New York Times bestseller list. She made the young adult Reese Witherspoon book club, and she's joined the Pitch Wars team as a mentor, all within her debut book. And on top of that, she's an accomplished violinist. So Punch Keys is super excited to welcome Lauren Blackwood.
Yay!
Hi, Cass. Hi, Poppy.
Hello. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm excited.
Yes.
I think Poppy and I are both super excited for this one because we're both on the high of just finishing your book. Yes. And we read it together and had so much fun with it.
Aww.
So it was fantastic. We really loved it so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, it was fantastic.
So all the stuff that we started out talking about, you've had a lot of accomplishment with this book. You've had a lot of stuff happen. This book hasn't been out that long either. It's probably been a crazy past couple months, I would assume.
I mean, it's only been out 4 weeks at this point. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So it's been crazy. It's been crazy. Yeah.
What's been the biggest surprise in all of it?
I mean, everything is just glorious. Like, I went in like, let me not put expectations on it. Otherwise, you set yourself up to feel like, oh, I need to achieve this, or I'm going to be disappointed. I got the Reese Witherspoon book club. Reese's book club. Mm-hmm. I was their fall YA pick, and she only picks one young adult novel per season, so that was pretty exciting.
Yes.
And then Britney Spears read it like 2 days after.
I didn't even know that.
Yes, 2 days after the book came out.
Oh my goodness.
Britney Spears posted about it on Instagram, and I'm like,
oh my gosh,
are you kidding me?
That's amazing.
Yes. And then it made the New York Times bestseller list and also the indie bestseller list. So very excited.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
So as we're releasing this podcast, we're going to be in the first week of December. Everyone is doing their holiday shopping. So the book that we're talking about here tonight is Within These Wicked Walls. It's out for purchase. Go get it. It's really fantastic. It's a young adult horror romance. It's a retelling of Jane Eyre. Well, not a retelling. It's inspired by Jane Eyre, I guess I would want to say after reading it. And so if you have someone on that shopping list, or if you yourself are interested in classics and like to delve into those same tropes and character archetypes, this is the book for sure.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about doing a retelling, because they're super hot right now. Everyone loves retellings. So why Jane Eyre? What inspired you with that?
Because I like the 2011 movie with Michael Fassbender.
That's fair.
I mean, there's a lot of good adaptations, but that movie is my jam. It's got the perfect vibes. Because every adaptation is directed differently. So this one just has the vibes. And really, I start every book I write with the romance. And so the romantic, the way it goes in Jane Eyre is just one of my favorite tropes. She works for him, he's a jerk, and she's like, what? And then they just butt heads until they fall in love, and it's fabulous.
And then you made it even more fabulous because then you decide to throw in a haunted horror house setting, which just made my heart go super pitter-patter.
I mean, yes. Why not? Why not? It had creepy vibes to begin with, like with that red room that Jane Eyre was scared of, and then the woman in the attic making creepy stuff go down. Why not just go all in and make it a haunted house,
Yes.
Oh, it totally worked. How much, because I know I've went through and I've read a bunch of the interviews you've done. You've done some great interviews, and you've talked about Jane Eyre and also the lore behind the evil eye. That was a lore that you had researched and partly developed, right? The amulets were a new part. So what part of that horror setting was inspired by the evil eye, and what part was inspired by Jane Eyre?
Okay, yes. I did so much research. And then, you do research and then you go back in and you're like, okay, gonna take a little creative license. So there are amulets, but I made them a little different than they actually are in real life. But the castle definitely There are castles like that in Ethiopia, but I definitely wanted to give that more Jane Eyre vibes. So that's why I made it cold in there and dark and like very just stone and spooky. And Magnus has a tendency to mix his cultures. So he's English, but he's also Ethiopian. So he mixes his cultures in the decoration. And so you see random, look, he loves Baroque stuff. So you see random Baroque embellishments everywhere and then random Ethiopian like woven rugs everywhere. So, I was trying to get a little bit of both in there.
I really loved the way you did that because it wasn't just the setting, it was his clothing and it was also it was kind of a core trait, it felt like, to his character almost. Like he doesn't have to adhere to one culture or a set of rules. He gets to do what he likes and picks and chooses. And it fit really, really well.
Yes, he's a fan of fashion. He really is.
Yes.
He's really, really likable and fun. I haven't read the original Jane Eyre, and I found myself wondering how similar he was to Rochester and how different he was. Is Rochester a little more mean, or is he just as likable?
Rochester is, in my opinion, I know some people are very, Jane Eyre is like the top tier, but which it is story-wise, but for me, Rochester is the worst in the original. He's awful and he's rude and he's pretty inconsiderate and he like does crazy manipulative things to her.
Oh.
And I'm not sure if he's like trying to like, oh, you got to prove your love to me or what, but he does the weirdest things to her. So I was like, let's downgrade that a little bit, turn the knob down on that just a little. And make it a little less intense and a little more, he's eccentric, misunderstood. I mean, he's a pain in the butt. Like, I will say that. He is, Magnus. But a little less abusive about it.
He was very likable. I really enjoyed him the moment he walked
you.
into the screen. I was just like, oh, I really like this guy because he's kind of like grumpy and like, oh, but like you understand it. And there was something about him though that was so like sweet and innocent almost. And even though maybe sheltered, I guess maybe is a better word for it. But at the same time, I don't know, he had a good heart all to the core of it. And I really enjoyed his banter and the way that he perceived everything and how she perceived him and their miscommunications. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I love Magnus. Love him.
Yes.
So I'm curious, when you're in the drafting phase and you're like, okay, I have this wonderful inspiration of Jane Eyre. I have this wonderful research of this lore that I like. I have a setting and a place. You've taken these characters and you've put a new spin on them. It's definitely not just taking the same characters that we know and putting them in a different setting. You've made them your own. How many drafts did that take? Did that come naturally, or did you find yourself slipping into what they were when you pulled from? How hard was that?
At this point, I don't know how many drafts because I went through a lot more editing after I got my agent, Lauren Spieler, and then after I actually got the deal and was working with my editor. So before that, there was maybe two and a half drafts, maybe. SJ, not to give spoilers. I mean, it's not really a spoiler because he's not like this anymore. Sinjin. He was supposed to be Sinjin. And he's definitely not. And then, but I kept the name because I'm like, hey, this is a cool name. And then Kalila is like a combination of a few characters. So I kind of like combined a few characters throughout because Jane Eyre is a very big book with lots of different characters and it goes throughout her whole life. So I combined a few characters into like each of my character.
Yeah, it is. Awesome. It expands over a long period of time. But I went through and I haven't read the original, but I read the summary on it and I could pick out which things you had picked and were inspired by. And that was really fun. It was like bonus material as a writer finding an author that did an amazing job and be like, oh, I can see glimpses into their process and what they picked and how. And it was really fun.
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you have any advice that you would give to writers who are trying to tackle a retelling of a classic story?
What I did was there were main events in the story that I knew I needed to hit. And so you kind of use that as sort of an outline. So like, these are the main events I need to get to, but don't be so like strict in how you get to them. not everybody writes like this, but I kind of get to know the characters and let them sort of guide the way. So it was never going to be like Jane Eyre anyway, because my characters' personalities are different. And so they're kind of guiding it differently. But yeah, definitely you want to do recognizable events from the original. And there's your retelling and sort of your bones for the story. So in that way, you don't have to do as much plotting because you got the bones right there in the original. And then, you just take the characters through, and however they're going to do it, that's how they're going to do it.
That's fantastic.
I guess in that way, yeah, don't be so worried about, oh, I need to do this exactly like it. You don't.
I think it's even better that way too, because then it gives it a more fresh spin on things instead of doing it as a complete rewrite, your own story.
I always say that what's the point of reading a retelling? If it's just like the original, you might as well read the original. And I always think about Clueless when I say that, because I'm like, Clueless is a retelling of Emma. But if I want to watch Emma, I'm not going to watch Clueless. And I want to watch Clueless, I'm not going to watch Emma. They have totally different vibes, but they're the same story. So yeah, I think about it that way. Same story, different vibes.
We always talk a lot about world building and how important it is and stuff, and how like the point when you're a reader is to fall into the world that you're, borrowing by reading somebody's book. And it was very easy to do that, to get lost in it and to not be jerked out of it at all. It was just like, I'm in, let's go. And
thank you. Thank you so much.
So, yeah, it was fantastic.
I know that was a lot of fun to write.
I can tell sometimes too, I feel like when somebody's like enjoying, because they're like getting in, like you can tell when somebody's writing, because we're all writers and we're sitting here and we're thinking about it and we're like writing this world and everything, and you can just tell when somebody's like just going along in the scene and and this we lost Cass and we'll just hang out, she'll come back, and then we'll just keep going again, she's popping out and be all right. But yeah, you can just tell sometimes when somebody's just happy writing and when they get into a zone, because you just like, it's so easy to cruise through reading it, and you can how smooth it is and everything.
Oh yes, really yes. The food scenes for sure. I was like,
yes. The food. I was like, oh my gosh, like I can tell like Magnus is like clothing. He's such a clothing guy.
Yes.
And then it was just like food. It was so fantastic for Andy. I was just like, yes, like that's like, she was just like, I just need to eat. I was like, oh, she's just so hungry. But then she was like, now I need to savor the food. I'm like, oh, she loves food. Like she's a foodie. It was so great. I loved it.
Yeah.
So that was such a fun detail that you dove into. It was really nice. Is this going to be a series? Do you have more coming into this world, or was that a standalone?
That was a standalone. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No series, but I am working on another book.
Good.
Just not, the
same different world.
Yeah.
Was that hard to let go, or was it like a relief? Like, whew, the world is out. I'm feeling way better.
You know what? Sad, but sort of relieved too, because I don't have to continue the rules of this world. I can make a whole new thing. So easier in that way. Not easy, but easier in that way, that I don't have to continue the rules.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That makes sense. You have to remember so much when you keep going in the same world. It's like,
yes. Oh my gosh. The continuity,
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay, Lauren, is there something you did in the beginning of your journey with querying and editing that you feel like made a difference to achieve the milestones that has happened with these Wicked Walls?
Well, the beginning was terrible. Like it took a lot of manuscripts to get to this point. Like I wrote a lot of books, but I did do a mentorship. And that really made a big difference, because when you have someone who's published a bunch of books, like helping you out, walking you through some of the process, looking at your manuscript, helping you break down how craft works and like how to tell a story, because you can write it, but that doesn't mean the plot is flowing like it should, the pacing and like, lots of craft stuff, basically. Yes. So yeah, that was life-changing for me in that. And that was not for Within These Wicked Walls. That was for a different manuscript. But I learned so much from that I could apply to Within These Wicked Walls, which made a huge difference. So
that's wonderful. Yes. Very, very good. Is there something you wish you would have done differently to make it somehow easier?
So much stuff. Don't rush into it. Finishing a draft, yay, you finished it. And then you're like, oh, I need to edit it. Okay, I'll edit it. But then, like, maybe one edit's not enough. And then you have to give it to your betas and your critique partners. And then you got to edit it again. The anticipation of being like, oh, I just want to query this. This is taking too long. I just want to query it. And then you query it too soon. And it's like, okay, well, that's a flop. So then you're working on the next thing and the next thing. And so, again, that's where the mentorship came in handy, because writing a book is hard.
Yeah,
and now my agent tells me I want this to be good, not fast. So that's something I continue to struggle with, like, because I draft pretty fast, but now I kind of know how to go about crafting it. So that makes it better. But like originally I was like, oh, I'm writing this fast and like, oh, it's amazing. And it's like, no, it's not. Don't rush into it. You've got time.
It's an amazing start.
It's a great start, but needs some work.
What is your drafting process like? Like, how do you start out? Are you like, do you jump in and like blurt everything out and tone it down? Do you add it up? What do you do for your drafts?
I'm a notorious underwriter. So my first drafts are usually about 40 to 50K, and then I always have to build it up. But really, I start with the romance. So I'll either like start with when they first meet to get their chemistry, or like a kissing scene or something, or like a scene where they're like, oh, there's romantic tension, but they're arguing, something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's never plot scenes I start with. It's always the kissing. But at that point, this is how I do it. But,
no, you're speaking Poppy's language.
You are.
But at that point, I always have a mini outline of, the main events that are happening. So I know what's happening around there anyways. But I always start with the romantic scenes, because that helps me get to know the characters better. And so it's easier to then do the plot stuff, because I know what they would do in those situations.
I like that. That's smart.
It is.
Plus, I just like the kissing, so.
Right?
Write the good stuff first.
Well, it definitely, like, you get to know them, right? Because they're getting to know each other. It's like, this is how it's going to work out.
Gosh, I saved those scenes for the very end because they are so hard.
Oh, gosh.
I'll just get to you later.
But they're so fun.
Oh
my God.
They're fun to read. I will say they are a blast to read.
Yeah.
For sure.
That is good stuff. Do you incorporate music into your writing?
Oh, for sure. Music is my life. Before the pandemic, I was professionally doing music, but I didn't feel like going out there and exposing myself. So like, no music at the moment.
Hold up. I need more on that. What do you mean you were professionally doing music? Tell me about this.
I'm a violinist. So like, I was playing at church. I was playing in like the pit for shows. I was doing lessons, doing weddings. So yeah.
What's like your most magical favorite piece to play?
Oh no. That's a good question.
That's a tough one.
It's so weird. I really like Shenandoah. I don't know who that's written by. Shenandoah. If you know how that one goes. I don't know. I'm not a singer. I just play violin. So, but piece-wise, Bach, which is Magnus's favorite composer. So I had to fit that in there. Love me some Bach. I like Vivaldi too. Look, this could take all night.
Vivaldi's amazing. Yes.
All right. We're going to go with Bach and Vivaldi. I don't know that one, but I'm going to look it up.
Yes.
Any concerto by him.
Also curious, you gave Magnus a really unique, almost piano instrument.
Yes,
I wasn't quite sure what it was.
Harpsichord.
Do you have experience with those? How did that come about?
I don't play keyboard instruments very well. I learned piano a little bit when I was little. But yeah, harpsichord is like a Baroque instrument. It's the keyboard instrument that's kind of used with the little basso continuo, like in the background. Sorry, technical terms. Like with the ensemble, so the bass and the cello, and then the harpsichord would accompany that, and the violins doing the melody and stuff. And forget viola, it's gone, it's out of there. But Yeah, so it has kind of a funny sound to it. Like Andromeda, this is not spoilers. She kind of describes, she's like, your piano's broken because it
I
kind of does
love
have
that.
like a little tinkle sound to it as if it's broken. So yeah, I just thought that like matched Magnus's quirk so perfectly. Like he's quirky and so is the instrument. So I'm like, this is like meant to be.
Did you ever use that instrument in any music that you listened to when you were writing him?
Oh yeah. There's a piece. Oh gosh, now I have to look it up to make sure I tell you exactly what piece it is because there's a piece that is Magnus. It is him, and it's a harpsichord concerto. And now I have to pull this up.
Oh, please do, because I want it.
Yes.
And then I'm going to ask you Andy's song, because she's got to have one too.
I'm not sure Andy has one. Oh, Magnus. Okay, so of course it's Bach. It's a Bach harpsichord concerto, and it is concerto number 5 in F minor, first movement, and it is amazing, and it's quirky, and it's weird, and it's just so kind of like, this is a haunted house, but it's not, but it is. So it's got all the vibes.
So I did my best to write all of that down, but will you email me a link and I will put it for all the listeners who are listening and they want to hear this song?
Yes,
I'll include the link in the episode description so they can hear.
Oh my gosh, yes, for sure. Yeah. Because it is Magnus. And I was like, yes, all his scenes I'm going to write with this piece on. Andy didn't really get a song. I listened to Rewrite the Stars a lot when I wrote their scenes. From The Greatest Showman.
I love it.
My husband loves that whole soundtrack.
It is wonderful.
It's incredible.
It is absolutely incredible. Yes.
So yeah, I did listen to a lot of that writing their scenes. But Andy herself didn't have her own song, unfortunately. Okay. But she doesn't know much about music anyway, so.
Fair enough. She's got other talents that we love.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Hers is like the scratch of metal or something like that. There it is.
Yeah, he's the artsy kid and she's the, work with your hands and stuff.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to do one more cast and then it is all you.
I normally run her interviews, but I disappeared on her and she's doing awesome stepping in. You're amazing.
She's my journalist person. I do not have journalism experience.
No, you're both so great.
Clear.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so as writers, we all have low days and you just can't seem to just pull it together. How do you drag yourself up on those low days?
Gosh, okay. Because when you're on deadline, you kind of got to get it together. You don't have like days and days where you can just be like, okay, it's not happening. Bye. I mean, you got to give yourself a little bit of time away. And then I usually involve Lindor truffles and Pepsi.
I love it.
And then like I give myself a little time away or like working on something else, like doesn't even have to be writing, just, getting my brain working on something else usually kind of resets it for writing mode.
Is this something else for you? Usually other creative outlets, or do you like shut down the creative brain altogether?
Oh, no. I mean, it could be music. Sometimes it's music. Sometimes it's laundry. Something as simple as that. Yeah. Laundry is never ending sometimes, it feels like. Sometimes it's cooking. Sometimes it's going out just to shop or something like that. Or window shop in my case. Like, I'm not trying to buy everything. I got a budget. But, so just like something completely different to reset your brain and like give that part of your brain a rest. And generally, when I'm out doing those things, the ideas will kind of just come to me and I'm like, wait, I'm not at my computer. Give me a sec. And it never gives me a sec. It just keeps going. So,
That's awesome.
That is.
So, music, low days, drafting. You had mentioned earlier when we were talking about how much you loved the particular rendition of Jane Eyre, and you were talking about how you loved the kissy scenes. There's certain things that you gravitate towards. There's certain tropes that you love. Obviously, romance is one of them. But when you're going into young adult romance, what were tropes that you were like, I have to have these in because I love them so much. They're my candy.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So only one bed is one of my favorite tropes, and I had to have that in there somehow.
You did good getting that one in.
Thank you.
That was crafty, and it worked out really well.
And then the not really not really enemies to lovers, but like the butting heads sort of thing is like my favorite, because then they have like, it's like conflict built in if they are arguing all the time. Sexy arguing is what I call that. So like, it's like there's chemistry, but like we hate each other, but you know.
But really, we just want to bang.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I can't think of any. Yeah, I think those were mostly the ones that I was like, yes, must do. And I'll probably think of some later, of course, but of course right
That's
now.
all right. So what are some tropes that you've seen that you were like, I'm definitely not putting that in. I want this trope kicked to the curb and not used anymore.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like most tropes, if they're done different enough, then you get a pass. Like, you can do that. In the original, Rochester is like way older than hers. I didn't want that weirdness. So he's her employer, but they literally are practically the same age. Like, he's only a year older than her. So they are peers, you know? So, and technically he doesn't even own his company, his dad's company. Yeah. So like SJ is running his estate for him. So technically he's not even the employer, you know, like he's just, you know, the face of it. So yeah, I love employer things, but not with the age difference and not with the power dynamics. Like, I like when they are equal in power somehow, even though he technically hired her. So no spoilers, but she has the upper hand most of the time.
Yeah, she does. That's really fun.
It is.
You did that really well, and that definitely came out, and I think that was smart. The power balance was fun to be a part of and read, because it's always like a cat and mouse. I don't know which one's going to get the upper hand next. It was really fun. Okay, so let's see. We've gone over tropes. We've gone over how much we love this book.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get into, so now that you have had this debut, you get to go in and be a mentor for Pitch Wars.
Yes, very excited.
That is exciting.
How did that process go? Did they contact you or did you contact them?
You have to apply, do their little applications. And I did with a co-mentor, because I'm like, my book is coming out soon. The application was in summer, and then my book came out in October. So I was like, I'm never going to be able to do this by myself, because you have to read so many submissions. And then once you get the mentee, you have to actually like mentor them. So I was like, let me get a co-mentor. So I got my awesome bestie, Emily Feed, who her book comes out next year. We have the same editor, so that's pretty exciting. But yes, so co-mentor. And then we did the application, and Emily did it last year. So she kind of helped me out with like the process of going through that. But it was fun, but it was a lot. I love the idea of mentoring, helping people climb higher up from where they were. But like, it's a lot of work. So you kind of have to like get in the mentality of that and make time, because I was like, my book's coming out and a lot of stuff is happening. And like around that time, I had found out about being a Reese book club pick. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to do a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff with them too. So I was like, wow, this is a lot of stuff. But I was like, I really want to help somebody.
What inspired that in you? Is there something particular you want to give back, or someone that helped you? Because I don't think it's common where everyone's like, as soon as they're getting there, they're like, how am I going to sign up and do all of this extra work that takes up all of my time? You seem very eager and ready to give back. It feels like such a weird question to ask, but I want to ask why.
I've sort of always been that. I was the kind of kid who was like, I'm going to sponsor a kid in a different country. And I'm like, I don't have any money, but I want to do that. And then like when I got older, I wanted to work in healthcare, because I'm like, oh, I just want to help people. And then I majored in music, and I'm like, what am I doing? So I've kind of always been that way. And so when the opportunity came up, I'm like, okay, I'm taking this opportunity, because any opportunity that comes up where I could help somebody. That's primarily why I taught violin lessons, because I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I guess I could say it was for money as well, but because, musicians don't make money, they got to teach. Really, the good part of it was helping these kids learn music and fall in love with it like I did. And sometimes I got a little crazy and overexcited, and they were like, whoa, I'm just doing this for school. But yeah, I've always kind of really been drawn to that sort of thing. And the opportunity came up, and I'm like, yeah, I could do this because I had been mentored before. So I kind of knew like the process of it. And now I understand craft a lot better, and I understand pacing, and I understand the industry a lot better. And so I'm like, what better way than to help somebody who wants to go through that? Why make them go through it without foundation, Because when you go through it without somebody telling you, you're kind of blindsided. Publishing is very different than a lot of industries. And so you end up kind of overwhelmed, by the way it works. So yeah, I just thought, you know what, why not help somebody get in and like not have to be as stressed as I was.
So I completely agree with you. And I know Poppy does too, because I think that's hugely why we started this podcast, because it's so hard when you're starting out. Like the industry is so much more complicated with so many more nuances than we ever imagined as we're getting into it. It's not as simple as just writing out a book and you're done and you hand it over.
Right.
And that's just the expectation a lot of times. I had noticed in some interviews you had talked about how helpful it was for you. You had gone through an under-marginalized author's mentorship where you had someone help you. As someone who was on the reverse side in the beginning, what was some of the best advice that you got through that to help you get where you are?
Well, I'm a pantser, so it's definitely like annoying for me to have to outline, but outlining is pretty necessary. Like even if you stray from the outline later, kind of mapping it all out in your head and putting it down on paper is pretty important, so that
like paper or typing on a screen count.
Oh, I type on a screen, but
Okay.
However you need to process it. Some people do like Post-its on the wall and stuff, like flashcards. However you need to do it to process the plot, you really have to understand where your characters are going before you really dive in. And that was hard for a pantser like me to get into at first, because I'm like, well, the characters are going to guide me. It's going to work out. And then you get halfway through the book and you're like, okay, what's going on? Where are they going? I don't know. And then you have to backtrack, rewrite most of what you've already written to get forward and like finish the book that you figured out later on. And it's like, well, why not just outline first? It doesn't have to be like a hugely detailed synopsis, because a lot of writers are going to be like me and like they don't know all the little details that are happening, but you do know what events are going to happen, and those are probably most likely, in my experience, going to stay the same. And so it's just sort of how you get there that's different. So I think writing it all out is super helpful in keeping the story, and that way you figure out if the plot is substantial enough and if you have to add something else, like another aspect to the plot. Because, some books are, well, maybe not the published books. Let me not talk about those. Like, just in general, if you are writing and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this boy meets girl or whatever, girl's parents don't like boy and whatever, that's a hook. That's not a plot, So outlining, as much as I hate to say it, very important, because you get it all down, like actually write the outline out so that you can see where there is lacking in the plot. And like pacing wise too, you can see that if you write it all down. So yeah, that's what I would say is the biggest thing I learned. Outlines are important, even for us pantsers. We got to have a little bit of framework in order to make it how it should be.
I'm also a pantser, and I've decided that any outlining or framework I do, I just hide it and don't let anyone know, and then I get to still call myself a pantser. Right? That's how that works?
Oh gosh. The annoying thing is not annoying. I love you, Lauren. Lauren Spieler, my agent. But she's always like, I need a pitch. I need a synopsis. I need and I'm like, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. So then I really got to think about it and like write the synopsis and like give it to her. And then she's like, oh, okay, this works. Or it doesn't work. And I'm like, of course it doesn't work because I don't know what's going to happen. But I think it really, really helps. Like for my second book, I wrote full synopsis and turned it in and got it approved. And then I wrote based on that. And a lot of things changed, but I did find that the main events that I put did not change. And so that's the thing to remember, that, you know, even if you don't stick exactly to your synopsis, it's going to help you.
You said the second book went smoother. I did want to ask you, how many books did you write before Within These Wicked Walls?
You know, like 4-ish, I think.
Okay, and so are those like some that you hope are going to go somewhere later, or are they like lost in a drawer to forever stay?
I mean, I would like to, but like, you know, looking back, craft-wise, they're not as good. Plotting-wise, they're not as good as Within These Wicked Walls. So they would need a big old overhaul to be at the same level, you know?
Did you feel different about Within These Wicked Walls when you were done with it than the ones prior? Like, did you feel the difference?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, I did. Yeah. It just felt more, nobody can see me, so I'm doing hand movements. It felt more like together, like very woven together. I kind of like a rug, like I was thinking, and all the pieces were in place. I feel like a lot of my old ones, like I'm like, oh, banter. I do love banter, but like there was a lot of unnecessary banter that didn't contribute to the plot. And I feel like every scene in Within These Wicked Walls is continuing the plot. You're getting to know the characters, but plot relevant, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
So yeah, all
Absolutely.
my old ones, I'm like, oh, the scene is amazing. I love this. Another kissing scene. Oh my gosh, yes. More banter, yes. But they didn't do anything for the plot. So it's like, why are you here? If I took you out, the story would not be, you know, it would not change. It wouldn't affect the story at all if I took this scene out. So yeah, just learning how to necessary scenes, like you can still have those good scenes, but they have to contribute to the story in a more substantial way.
I agree with that 1,000%. And I just want to say too, all of that banter you did in the previous books obviously worked out. I have never cackled at so many lines.
Yes.
And then in the first half, it was some of like the bluntness of Andy and the stuff she would say. I was like, I love her. And then in like the second half of the book, as Magnus is getting more comfortable, and then bring in, am I pronouncing it Jember?
Yeah. Jember.
Yeah. And when he's actually there instead of just memories, your banter in all of these different types of relationships is fantastic.
Thank you.
And I did want to ask you as well. I know you're huge into romance, and the romance is fantastic. But one thing I really love that matters a lot to me when I'm reading a romance, both of your main characters have other relationships that you show throughout the book. Was that something that came out naturally, or you had to work on it? Because you said the romance comes first.
The romance does come first, but yeah, family relationships are really important to me as well, because I'm super close to my family. Like, preface this, I have the best father in the world, on the planet. So he is not Jember, but
it's funny how people always think that stuff.
Yeah, people are like, oh, is this your life? No, not my life. Not at all.
No.
Not my life at all. But yeah, so family and friend relationships are like just as important to me as the romance, even if the romance takes more center stage. Though honestly, Andy and Jember's relationship kind of got just as much page time as Andy and Magnus, but that happened in revisions. That wasn't originally like how it was. He was less involved and less seen. And I was like, by the time I was done writing, I'm like, wait a second, I love him too much. He's got to get in there. And it proved to be
so glad
like,
he is.
yes, it was the best decision ever, because I think, you know, people's relationships kind of show you who they are, you know? And so adding that extra layer, I think that was easier to express, you know, character, personalities, and like motivations better than if you're just sitting there listening to the narrator say what she's gonna do? What's your motivation? Oh, I need a job because I'm out on the street. Why are you out on the street? Oh, my dad kicked me out. Not her dad, her mentor. And
He's
he's
her
a
dad.
jerk. And like saying he's a jerk is way different than like showing that he's a jerk. But then also he raised her, and saying he raised her is incredibly different from like showing their dynamic. So I was like, this has got to be in there.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
I was
really
completely
good.
hooked on those
I loved
scenes. They
that.
were fantastic.
Yes.
I've had a lot of people tell me that's their favorite part of the book is Andy and Jember, and I'm like, well, I'll take that. That's great.
I love them, but I love Magnus.
I love Magnus.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yes.
I have
So
to have
much.
them both, and you've given them both to me, and my world is better for it. So thank you. Do you have other stuff coming up? What do you got going on?
I do. Yes, I have another book that I'm working on now, but I can't talk about it because it's
Okay, that's fair.
until it's announced or whatever. But it's gonna have similar vibes, but it's gonna be set in Jamaica instead of Ethiopia, and it's gonna have monstery stuff. So it's gonna be great.
Awesome. So we know to keep looking out for that. We won't try and get you to reveal anything too soon, but we'll keep an eye out for sure. That's exciting.
Everybody go follow Lauren on Goodreads. Make sure that you click the button and keep posted. I cannot wait. That's awesome.
I feel like I have to go look at Goodreads now, but I think that's a bad idea because I'm going to be like...
I completely understand, yeah.
So...
It's love-hate with Goodreads.
Speaking of Goodreads, give me 2 book recommendations. One for pleasure, one for craft.
Oh my gosh. I love so many books. That I'm just like, Beasts of Prey by Anna Gray was fabulous. Awesome. For craft, I don't read craft books. I just read widely, and that's sort of my craft practice. So I would definitely recommend any writers out there to read in genres that you don't write. So read some romance, read some mystery. I don't read horror because I get too scared.
You just write it. It's okay.
I just write it. I'm not scared of my own imagination. That's the weird. I'm not scared of my own imagination. But like if somebody else is doing it, I'm like, okay, no, thank you.
Get control over it. Yeah.
So definitely reading widely is what I would say is my craft book.
That's smart. Everyone should be doing that.
Wonderful.
So you're not doing craft books, but do you have any blogs, podcasts, websites, Substack, anything that you follow about the craft that you wanted to talk about?
Yes, Basic Pitches is one of my favorite podcasts. So Emily and Anna talking about craft, talking about sequels, talking about pitches. They talk about all different things for craft, and they're a great time to listen to. And then I think craft goes hand in hand with like kind of knowing the market and knowing the industry. And I think Manuscript Wishlist is a great website to look at and just look through it, see what the agents and editors are saying, what they're looking for. And of course, you can't write to trend. By the time you write to trend, the trend is moved on, But like, I think knowing what's out there is just as important as knowing how to write a book. Because I have seen a lot of writers be like, oh, my book is super unique. And I'm like, well, no, there's this and this and this out there. There's other books, that have similar hook. And it's like, so you have to kind of know what's out there. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing that you have a similar hook to somebody. It's just doing it differently, But I think knowing what's out there kind of helps you a little bit more be able to do things differently and do things well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because also seeing what is done that's similar and how it's succeeded and how it's failed can help you tweak what you're doing. Definitely. So we've kept you on quite a bit. So I
could be on here forever.
Good. We like that. We do always end with the same question for everyone. And so we have that one for you. And the question is, give us a metaphor that describes your journey of writing.
Oh my gosh, I got the perfect one. It is like cleaning out a garage or cleaning your room. You're like, oh, hey, this is a lot of stuff, but I got this. And then in the middle, it gets a little messy. Like it gets way messier before it gets cleaner. But then by the end, you have a nice, neat garage. And it's like, look at this. All that hard work and I did it.
I love that because it always
I
does
love
get
it.
messier in the middle.
Yes.
Just like writing. You're
Oh.
like, at some point, you're drowning. At least I am. Maybe that's just me.
Well, you change something and you break
Right.
3 other things, and it's like,
Right.
oh, like, you know, not to go clean those up too. It's like you just make a mess with the one thing. You like just need to tweak this one thing. Oh, just kidding,
Right,
I broke
right.
it all.
'Cause if you-
Awesome.
yep.
So I love it. That's a great metaphor. I
So
love it.
remember, anyone who is out there Christmas shopping, please add Within These Wicked Walls to your list to give out to anyone you know. It's young adult romance and horror. It's not like too horror. It's pick it up. It's worth it. It's really good.
And it's beautiful. Like the prose is so pretty, and just oh man,
Thank
it's just really
you.
great.
We will always, per usual, we'll have links on here to give you Lauren's Twitter account, her Goodreads account, all the ways that you can connect with her as a super uber fan. And in the meantime, everybody keep punching those keys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And if you liked this episode, please subscribe and give us that clickable 5-star love.
Got writer questions or feedback? Reach out through our website. And until next time, make sure to punch the keys.